REM, and these are all the books I read in March of 2026. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is I read 32. However, a full half of those, 16 of those, were Batman comics. And I'm about to go into my stats, but I'm not going to put the Batman comics in the stats, okay? Because that's absurd. And also because I'm not sure where to put them, honestly. And two, I'm going to go into reviews, and I'm not going to mention the Batman comics. I'll just say quickly which ones I read. But first of all, I have a whole vlog out about it. It's already out as of filming this. And B, I cannot remember exactly what happened in each comic. So let's get into the stats. So for the stats, first of all, what was the intended audience? I read 1 picture book, 4 early chapter books, like for beginning readers, 4 middle grade books, 5 YA books, and 2 adult books. This is definitely different than what I usually read. I usually read a lot more adult books and not a lot at all of YA books. Then, for genre, I read 1 biography, 1 realistic fiction, 2 sci-fi, and 12 fantasy. Now, this is closer to what I usually read in that I do tend to read a lot of fantasy, but it's usually not that much overwhelming, I feel like. But it was in March. So let's get into the books I actually read. So the first thing I read was I read 2 different books from 2 different series by Nancy Krulik. The first book I read was Game, which is part of the Katie Kazoo Switcheroo series, which is about a girl. These are both part of the beginner reader books. So this is about a girl, Katie, who has this horrible, terrible day, and she wishes that she could be anyone else but her. And that happens in the first book in the series. This is further on in the series. In every book, something happens, a wind comes, and she is someone else but her. In this one, she turns into her dad just as he's about to go on a game show. This one I thought was really fun. It was really cute. I definitely understood her anxieties, her dad's anxieties. And also, I thought it was very nice how her parents talked to her about like making mistakes, even if they're like in front of a bunch of different people. I thought it was also good. Then I read I Want My Mummy, which is the first in a different series, which is kind of Magic School Bus type thing, where our main characters are in a class and they have a teacher who can take them anywhere in the world, except something fantastical always happens. So in this case, in the first book, they go to Egypt, and of course they meet a mummy. This is a longer book than the Katie Kazoo books. The Katie Kazoo books are around 60 to 80 pages. This was 140 pages. So, and the vocabulary is a bit higher, but, besides that, I also had a fun time here. I thought it had a good mix of scary and silly, and I really enjoyed the silly parts in here. Yes, it's humor for like 9-year-olds, but I still enjoy the humor in here. Now, before we continue in chronological order of what I read, I'm going to skip ahead to the middle of the month and talk about another Katie Kazoo book I read. I read Witch Switch, which is another Katie Kazoo book that happens on Halloween, and Katie sees a very scary woman living in this very creepy house, and then she gets switched into her body. Again, I thought this was such a fun book. I feel like a lot of the Katie Kazoo books I read, I was talking about this in previous months, that I felt like a lot of them all the same thing of like Katie makes a mistake while she's in someone else's body and she feels really sorry about it, and she tries to fix it and manages to fix it when she's back in her own body. And I got tired of it, especially because, like, poor Katie, like, she's 10 years old, and the mistakes she was making are because she's suddenly put into the body of a professional chef and stuff like that. So neither of the Katie Kazoo books that I had that. Well, the first one did, except that, like I said, it was since the dad thought he made the mistakes, and she's their kid, so they were really talking to her about, like, it's okay, we make mistakes sometimes, even when it happens on national TV, it's fine, stuff like that. And then the Witch Switch was definitely a kitschy story, but it was cute. It was sweet. Okay, back to in order, I read Fire and Air, both by Tom Mason and Don Donko. So these are Avatar: The Last Airbender Companions, where basically each book is a different nation. Obviously, I read Fire and Air, and they tell us a little bit more about that nation, and they also retell some of the episodes that happened while they were in these nations. Now, look, would I ever buy these books? No, because they're retelling of the episodes. But I had a really good time reading them and revisiting the world of Avatar. Oh, okay. Then I read Murder on the Disoriented Express and Deceptive by Emily Lloyd Jones. Like Fire and Air, these are the last two in the series. However, this is a very different series. This is a YA sci-fi series where a vaccine caused a very, very small amount of the population to get different types of superpowers. And basically, in America, everybody with these superpowers has to work for the government. So in the first book, we follow Sierre, who has a superpower, and because she does not want to work for the government, she is a thief. And we continue on in these two books from the first book, and a lot of things happen in the first book, but I like these books so much. They're not perfect. They're definitely not perfect. But they are such a sorry, I got distracted. Um okay, yeah. But I still enjoyed them so much despite their imperfection. Okay. Then I read The Crown of Dalemark by Diana Wynne Jones, another Last in series. And this is, again, it's hard to explain what it's about because it's the Last in series. Basically, this happens in a fantasy world where there is a great division between the North and the South. And I feel like I can't tell you any more than that. Again, I really like this book, despite not being able to tell you anything about it. I did not like it actually as much as the books that I just talked about, Murder on the Disoriented Express and Deceptive. But I thought it was one of Diana Wynne Jones' best written endings, honestly. And overall, I really enjoyed it. There was just like one specific part that I did not enjoy, and that took away from my overall enjoyment of it, obviously. Okay. Then I read The Knife of Impossible Memory by Laurie Halse Anderson. This is actually a standalone and my only realistic fiction. So this is also the YA book. So this is a book about a teenager whose father has PTSD. And for the first time in many, many years, they are living in one place again, and she's going to high school. And her father is really struggling, and honestly, she also has some trauma, and she's really struggling, and the more father struggles, the more she struggles. And I just love Laurie Halse Anderson's books. They are just so well written, okay? Did I enjoy this book as in it made me happy? Absolutely not. Do I think it was well written? Yes. Okay, then I read The Road from Home, the story of an Armenian Girl by David Hardian. So this is my biography that I said it's a biography. So David Hardian wrote this about his mother's story during the Armenian genocide. But it's written like first person as if she's writing it, which is a choice and I'm totally fine with. And like, it's his mom. He probably heard the story so many times. And it was well written, first of all, and I think it's also an important topic. I knew vaguely about the Armenian genocide, but now I know more details. And again, I'm not happy about knowing them, but I still think it's important to know about them, you know? Moving on, I read Space Explorers by Eva Moore. So remember how I said I want my mummy's kind of magic school bus? Space Explorers is Magic School Bus. So these are not novelizations of the TV show because it's not novelizations of the episodes. They're just like extra added stuff. So now the thing about this is that they're meant to teach science, right? But this was written when Pluto was still a planet, and so a lot of the stuff here is wrong. I'm still keeping it because, first of all, when I was born, Pluto was still considered a planet, and secondly, These are such fun books, and I also, being the kind of person I am and always have been, I do like that in the back they like say, here are the stuff that isn't true, that we made it so that this would be more of an interesting book. Perfect. You know? Okay, then I read Salamander Spell by E.D. Baker. So this is a prologue to The Frog Princess by E.D. Baker. And a prequel, not a prologue, a prequel. And we are following Gracina, who is the second daughter in a kingdom where the first daughter is always the queen and the witch of the kingdom. And let's just say Gracina and her sister do not get along at all. They have massive sibling rivalry. And so Gracina kind of comforts herself by just going and exploring the swamp. However, one day a curse is put on her mother, the queen, and the green witch of this kingdom. The green witch is very important in keeping this kingdom together. And her mother turns from the green witch to an evil witch. So Gracina has to figure out how to deal with everything that's happening, and ends up deciding to run away and live in the swamp, where except that things are not as peaceful as she thought they would be, partially because she is a spoiled princess. Spoiled as in she's lived in a nice home all her life. I would be the same way too, yes. Who is not prepared at all to live in the wilderness, and partially because the fact that there is no longer a green witch but an evil witch is rocking the kingdom's foundations. And so Gracina has to kind of figure out how to save the kingdom. And I actually like this more than The Frog Princess. There is still romance in it, but I thought that it was better built up than The Frog Princess. And I enjoyed the adventure story more. Like, the things that Gracina has to do are crazy, and that's what makes them fun. Okay, then I read my absolute favorite book of the month, which was A Skinful of Shadows by Frances Hardinge. I put this in genres as fantasy. It's actually historical fantasy. So this takes place during the English Civil War. And we're following our main character, whose name is Makepeace, which, first of all, great name. But she has always known that there are ghosts trying to get into her head, and she has to fight them. When her mother dies, she's sent to live with her father's family, who she never met, and she discovers that they want to use her as a vessel to put ghosts in. So she obviously attempts to run away, except that the English Civil War is happening. And this story is just so, so good. The characters are so great. The way that they interact with each other is so great. I love Makepeace to bits. She's just so understated, which is kind of what makes her a great character, because it makes the things that are happening seem less absurd. Like, listen, there are crazy things happening, and she's like in the middle of a bunch of crazy stuff, and it also makes sense because of the plot. But like, I feel like the fact that she's understated makes it even like be like, okay, and then you go back and you're like, wait, that was crazy. But she doesn't say it's crazy, because she's just like, okay, this is what I have to do now. This might be, I need to go back and reread the Lie Tree, and then I'll see if I like this one better or the Lie Tree better. Sorry for the shaking. I don't know why that's happening. Then I read a picture book. I don't know if this is translated into English. It's French. I read it in Hebrew. But it is called, if it exists in English, it's called TheWolfFool.com. It's by Mariam Oisad and illustrated by Badel Ronan. And it's such a fun picture book. I can't say anything about why it's fun, except the pictures. The pictures are so fun. But it actually has a plot twist. I can't give spoilers, but basically this is about a little bunny rabbit who is very scared about a wolf coming and his mom is comforting him about like why the wolf won't come, and the bunny rabbit is like, but what if he finds the city? She's like, wolves don't live in cities, they live in forests. Like, what if he finds the city anyways? And so on and so forth. Like, question, answer, question, answer. Okay, then I read Winds of Fate by Mercedes Lackey. This I did not like that much. This is a book about Elspeth, who is a princess in a land which is being threatened by magic, except her land has no magic, so she goes out to search and find magic to bring back to her land. And this book was just very, very slow. It was far too slow in my opinion, which is the main reason why I didn't like it. And then lastly, I read Ghosts from the Library, Lost Tales of Terror and the Supernatural, which was edited by Tony Medawar. So this is a collection of ghost stories from the early 20th century to the mid 20th century. And look, if you expect Tony Medawar to actually collect the stories he says he's going to collect, don't expect them, because these are not Lost Tales of Terror. Well, but this is much better than Bodies in the Library, which is supposedly mysteries. These are all ghost stories of a sort, so they are all supernatural. I was expecting more horror, but there's a lot more humorous ones. I suppose that's what Tony Medawar likes. But they are all ghost stories, so, and it said Lost Tales of Terror and the Supernatural, and there are some tales of terror. One or two. Yeah, there are a few. Overall, I like this collection a lot more than Bodies in the Library. I'm not looking to read more collections by Tony Medawar. I feel like some of these are like, because they're like less well known, and then you read them and you're like, oh, okay, this is why it's less well known. But there was one I actually really, really liked. So yeah, it was on the, I'd say as a collection, it was actually like, most collections are around 3 to 3.5 stars if you really think about it, and this was closer to the 3.5 end. So those are all the books I read in March, except for the Batman comics, and we'll quickly go over which Batman comics I read in March. So, I read Batman number 484, Batman Sword of Azrael number 1, Batman Sword of Azrael number 2, Batman Sword of Azrael number 3, Batman Sword of Azrael number 4, Batman Vengeance of Bane number 1, Batman Vengeance of Bane number 2, Batman number 485, Batman number 486, Batman number 487, Batman number 488, Detective Comics number 654, Detective Comics number 655, Detective Comics number 656, Detective Comics number 657, and Detective Comics number 658. Thanks for watching!